it's like they're connecting. But I'll just say again, I'm Sarah Brinkman. I'm the executive director for HomeStart. We have offices in Freeport and Rockford. And we are connected in this program to the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois, where we administrate this grant program for them. The Community Foundation, and I think James will give you even more history on this, but has awarded grants under this program for a number of years. I think they're well over 750,000 that has gone into neighborhood projects throughout the years. But 5 years ago, or almost 6 now, we started to partner with them to help expand the program, and mostly around some leadership opportunities. So as going back, the Community Foundation does award funding in 4 counties in Northwest Illinois. So Winnebago, Boone, Ogle, and Stephenson, which overlap with counties that we serve. We also are able to bring in some resources from our national partner, which is NeighborWorks America, where we can connect people to some leadership training, either locally, or we give an opportunity for one team to go to a national training. And we thought it was a good partnership to bring these. We get to know the work that you're doing because we help you connect to the Community Foundation's funding for your neighborhood projects. But then as we get to know you, we help to look at what else you want to do in the future, and if we can help build capacity around the team that you're bringing together or other resources you might need down the road. So that's how our partnership started and why we're doing this together. I'm going to introduce Kyler. He's the other HomeStart representative. He did change his name. Thank you, Kyler. Kyler is our marketing and engagement coordinator. So he has been with us since June and has mostly been scheduling our messaging out to get what we're doing in the different services we have, which has been a bigger job than normal in COVID, because there was what you were, and then there was what you became during COVID and what your community needed. So HomeStart generally helps people get ready for homeownership or sustain their homeownership. So we've always been in credit repair and again, pre-purchase counseling and education and looking at down payment resources. During COVID, though, we had added a lot of opportunity to access rent assistance programs, and then it moved again into more some foreclosure and eviction prevention services, helping people connect to those. We also added volunteer income tax assistance. So we now run the free tax service that Goodwill used to run. We've started that program in our offices and added Freeport now as a location for those services. So that's my intro to why we're here and so what we do, but what we love about doing in this program with the Community Foundation. And James, was that the dog and pony show that I was supposed to do?
Yes, I see you went with the animal optional approach there.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's exactly what we wanted. And just as a representative of the Community Foundation, we can't be thankful enough for the work that HomeStart has done with us on this particular program. Makes perfect sense for this partnership to exist, and it's worked very smoothly over the many years. And that's a credit to HomeStart for them really taking the ball and running with it. So I get to talk about the history of the grant program. And I'm excited to talk about it because I have a lot of pride in it, not because of anything I've done, but because of what we've been able to do through this grant program. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and I've only got like 2 monitors and I feel like I need 6. So bear with me if I am not showing exactly what I'm supposed to be showing. Okay, so tell me if you see a slide. It says neighborhood grants. Yes. So we're off to a good start, folks. This may work. All right, so yeah, so like I said, I want to talk about the history of the program. And the first thing is back in 1990, there were just 15 neighborhood organizations that existed in Rockford that anyone knew of. And also in 1990, the Community Foundation received a $500,000 Ford MacArthur grant to support affordable housing. So at that point, the Community Foundation began working with the Rockford Neighborhood Redevelopment Organization, Zion Development, Trinity House, the Rockford Area Habitat for Humanity, many of the local banks and local realtors look at ways that we could promote affordable housing. And we were awarded $250,000, or we actually awarded $250,000 to 4 different neighborhood development organizations in that time period from like 1991 to 1993. And then out of all of that work, one of the main outcomes really was the development of the Rockford Area Affordable Housing Coalition in 1991. And the Community Foundation then, looking at the work that they've been doing with all of the residents in the neighborhoods, felt like there needed to be some dollars that were getting out into the hands of the neighborhood residents to do projects that they felt were important within their own neighborhoods. And so in 1995, we established the Neighborhood Grants Program with some dollars that we had available and that we sort of earmarked for that particular purpose, and still do for that particular purpose. So it was really one of just a few grant programs like this that were sort of, you would call it a grassroots grant program, where we would give organizations that weren't necessarily 501c3s access to charitable dollars and be able to, work with people that had their boots on the ground, so to speak. So that first year, we were able to give 22 grants for $24,500. And then we were able to really participate in a lot of neighborhood activism in different ways. So like in 1996, we helped establish the neighborhood organizations, the Council of Neighborhood Organizations in partnership with the city of Rockford. In 1997, we partnered with the League of Women Voters to bring John McKnight, who was the co-founder of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute at DePaul University, to the Rockford to speak to our local neighborhood organizations. From 1998 through 2000, the Neighborhood Grants Program and the City of Rockford and the United Way and the CNO partnered to provide leadership training through the Gamaliel Foundation to Rockford neighborhoods. So sort of some community organizing opportunities and leadership development through that. And all this time making grants every year, by the way. So, but these were some of the initiatives that we were involved in through that. And so in 2005, the City of Gardens, we partnered with the City of Gardens to really create opportunities to facilitate the win that Rockford had in the American Bloom contest that occurred back then. So we actually earmarked $45,000 specifically for beautification projects that year to help support that. And then in 2005, we sort of facilitated the development of the Neighborhood Network organization, kind of as a successor organization to the Council of Neighborhood Organizations, and just to give them opportunities to partner and work together and share ideas and that sort of thing. And then in 2006, we partnered with the city again, using sort of at that time Mayor Morrissey's theme of excellence everywhere, and we actually themed not only our Neighborhood Grants Program around that, but also our youth program, and Youth We Trust grant program around it as well. So you probably noticed I've said partner like 3,000 times, and that's because that's what we do. It just makes sense. There's certain things that we do well, and there are other things that other folks do well. And again, that's one of the reasons why this partnership with HomeStart makes so much sense. So in 2010, we partnered again with Neighborhood Network in the City of Rockford to create a couple of additional grant programs there were small mini grants, one for capacity building and one specifically for beautification. And that was, again, in addition to the regular Neighborhood Grants Program that we're doing. And then in 2017 is when we developed the partnership with HomeStart. And again, I'm just going to go back to this. The involvement of HomeStart in this process It has been a real boon to the grants program, but then really to our neighborhoods in the community. So it established relationships with residents that we were not able to do. We don't work within the neighborhoods as much as what HomeStart does. They were able to find additional funding sources, as Sarah mentioned before. I mean, there are several situations where there was an organization that had applied for a grant, but they had other dollars that could cover it, and then that gave, our dollars the ability to expand to help other organizations. So that was a tremendous thing. They've had a long history of providing leadership training through NeighborWorks, as Sarah had mentioned, which is amazing. And of course, they were able to expand the reach of the program beyond just Winnebago County, which we were just focused on, to include the other counties in our service area, which would be Boone, Ogle, and Stephenson counties. So I really like to think that the program really has come full circle, because HomeStart is actually the result of a marriage between a Neighborhood Housing Services of Freeport and the very same Rockford Affordable Housing Coalition that was a result of the original grant back in the day. So to me, it's just come full circle, and it's really like it's almost come home in a way. So looking back here, so 27 years later, and it's crazy to even say 27 years, it doesn't seem that long ago. Not that I was here in the very beginning, just for the record, but I came in after probably about 7 years. But 27 years later, we have had a high of 90 neighborhood organizations, up from that 15, which is incredible. We've made 400, and by the way, not saying that those 90 organizations exist just because of the neighborhood grants program. That's ridiculous. However, I think those grants did help facilitate that, and then did help put some focus on neighborhood development. And so speaking of the grants, we've made 490 grants during that time, totaling nearly $800,000 since 1995. And these grants have really run the gamut. I mean, we've done cleanups, we've done newsletters, we've done safety programs, we've done beautification efforts, we've done signage, we've done community gardens, just so many different things. But the real key here, and you'll probably hear this later in the presentation as well, the key is that it's neighborhood improvement by and for neighborhood residents. It's about the residents on both sides of it. So that's the history of the program. And I wanted to just take a few minutes to talk about the technology that you use to access the application. And actually, let me just pause for 1 second. Are there any questions that I can answer right now?
I have on the neighborhood improvement by neighbors.
Yes.
I became a little concerned yesterday. Jan emailed me about the fact that our program really did not fall within that, but that makes no sense. We are a neighborhood group helping neighbors with that have low income that can't fix up their homes. Do we fall indeed in the?
It's hard for me to say without knowing more about the project and the organization offhand.
Okay, Rebuilding Together is a national affiliate, and it's basically an organization that helps people in the city, in the county, in essence, fix homes that they could not afford to fix. And we use volunteers that are from the neighborhood to, in essence, help a neighbor that has problems with their house.
Yeah. And so I guess what I would say is that it's possible that you do fit within what we do. I think the real key is going to be to what extent are those neighbors within that neighborhood engaged in it? And to what extent does it bring them together? To what extent does it increase their capacity, their leadership abilities, those kinds of things? So if it's more that you're going in and you're fixing it for them and then you're leaving, that's really not what it's about. I mean, not that they don't benefit from the fixing, don't get me wrong, that's not the point. What you're doing from that perspective certainly would be a fit for the community grants program at the Community Foundation.
I would say we'll be going through the criteria too of.
Yeah, we're going to do that in a minute, so maybe we should wait.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
and I'll reference back and maybe give you some suggestions to see, because again, like some of the specifics, maybe not, but yeah, we'll get that too. It's a good question.
okay.
It is
Yeah.
a good question. So back to the technology, you would apply through our web portal, our grants portal, and you can see it on the screen there. It's important. There's a couple of things I'll just point out, technically speaking here. It's important that you put your email address in because it is case sensitive. Be careful how you put it in. It is case sensitive because it acts as a username. It's not just an email address, it's a username. So that is important. And it is important that every organization has their own account in the portal. And so the first person to create an account would create it for their organization, and then they would need to add other people to their organization through the system. And there's helps within here to do that. And if you don't know if your organization has an account, that's not a problem. Just call Lisa. Her information is on our webpage to check into that. And because if you do have an account and you create another organization, there'll be two organizations. So we don't want to have duplicates in there if we can get out of it.
What is your web portal registration? How do I get to your webpage?
Yeah, so, and actually I probably should have started there. It's a great question. What you would want to do is go to our website, and our website is cfnil.org. And when you go there, at the top to the right of every single page is a button that says apply for a grant. You click on that and it'll take you to this screen that you're looking at right now without all my little decorations. So, but I would encourage you, and you can see the little blue oval there, to go ahead and register as soon as possible, just to make sure that there are no registration issues and that kind of thing, and that we can help you out. Like if you find out that you want to find out if you have an organization, that way you have plenty of time to actually work on your application itself. So I would encourage that. I'll go to the next slide here. And as far as the organizational information goes, it's important to get it right, because it's not something that you can go back in and change after the initial setup. It's something that you would need to call Lisa and ask to have changed. So that is important to get that right the first time.
What's Lisa's phone number if we're going to have to call her for all these different things?
It's well, it's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the website.
I have it.
And I added the link inside the chat for anybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So applying for a grant, once you're in, the first thing you're going to see once you've logged in, you're going to see this, the applicant dashboard. And at the top of it, you'll see that there's an apply link that I've circled there in red. Once you click on that, you'll see the opportunities to apply. And in this particular case, we're mostly talking about the neighborhood grants application, and it would be listed there. Down here, you can see for your organization, you have these tabs where it'll show any active requests that you have going on right now. Let's say, for an example, you have applied to the Community Foundation Community Grants Program, and you have a grant there. You'll see that one listed here under the Active Requests tab. Let's say you have one that you've already turned in a final report for. You would see it under the historical requests here. So you can see your history, so to speak, with the Community Foundation, your grant history with the Community Foundation right there. I'm gonna go to the next slide. So once if you've clicked that apply link, this is the page you're gonna land on. This is the apply page, very creatively named. But so you'll go here and you look at this area here, you can see that we have these blue links. Those blue links will take you to either instructional videos on how to do things, or it'll take you to written instructions on how to do things. There's some really good tips that you can find. And down here, I mentioned about adding others to your organization. This link here, using Collaborator for adding users to your organization, would be the way that you'd want to do that. So that can be very helpful in that case. And the idea is that, let's say there's a couple of you that are working on the application. You know, one of you would have to be the main applicant, but there might be another person that you want to be able to read it, or maybe you want them to be able to edit particular parts of it because they know more about it, that kind of thing. You could add them as a collaborator, and that they could go in there and make those sorts of adjustments and things. You do have this preview link down here to look at all the questions that are on the application. Now, we also have on our website, we also have a Word version of the application that you can download, and you can type right into it and maybe fashion your answers and then copy them into the online form. That's a possibility. Some people like to do that because you know, Word maybe is a little easier to use to do your wordsmithing and the formatting and that you want to do. So that's possible as well. I also want to say that the application auto saves, which is a really nice feature, which our previous one did not do that. And so there were times where people would lose all their work because they did not click a save button. You don't have to worry about that with this one, so that's nice. And the last thing to mention here is the deadline. And my little circle is a little off there, isn't it? It's covering up the deadline, but that's probably okay because it's not the same deadline, because I made that slide last year. But on the apply page on the live site, you'll see the actual deadline. So I will go to the next slide, which is actually non-existent. That's the end of my part of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Kyler for the nuts and bolts of the grant program itself. And we can actually, I'll take any questions you have right now too, or we can wait to the end, however you'd like to do it.
When I talked to you last, James, you
Yes.
emailed me the application that was for last year so I could actually work on it and get ahead, because you said basically it was not going to be that different.
Correct.
Now I have almost completely completed it. Can I do a cut and paste from it?
Yes. Yes, you've done it in Word, right?
Yeah, it's in Word. It's on my Microsoft Word. So I can just go through and cut and paste and then put them to the places they exist now on the application.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just make sure that the question's exactly the same.
Yeah.
I think they all are. Lisa and I worked on this like a couple of weeks ago, so I think we didn't make many changes at all.
Okay.
And thanks for that, James. Sarah's.
Well, I'll just start. Unless we want to move to, I don't know, Kyler, you can get it open then figure out how to, but anyway, I'm going to go through more of the criteria of the grant. So this should get at some of when you start to answer the questions, what this grant is meant to do, and what sorts of things we are looking to see in your application, and then what we have funded in the past, and give you some idea. So again, a purpose of this grant is to encourage and support the network of neighborhood-based groups and organizations. So as you saw in the history, it just has funded neighborhood associations. It has started neighborhood associations. It has funded 501c3s that were embedded in neighborhood organizations or neighborhoods specific, or organizations that had chosen for their work that particular year a certain neighborhood or geographic, really specific geographic area. That's what we're referring to with neighborhood. But the idea is that—
Would you again give that definition of neighborhood? I'm sorry.
So a defined geography, like, right, and not defined geography like Rockford, but a defined area where you're engaging with the people who live there and providing something or working with them to provide something that affects their physical environment, their the assets in their neighborhood, including them. Sometimes it's just a people event, and we'll list out some different types of things we've funded in the past. But the idea is not the community grants, and that's a larger grant cycle and a different kind of opportunity. Those look to fund organizations for their general work, and then a specific project within that general work. So when you're looking at your geography for defining a project like that, you can be based in Rockford or Freeport or Ogle County, or when the geography of it is something you talk about, but it can be broader. You're really looking at your mission and your project's objectives and then defining it. For this grant,
But the second home we plan to do is in Orangeville. Would that be a neighborhood?
Orangeville basically is, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
All on
it's
its own.
small enough. I thought
Yeah.
so.
We did at one point fund something for the village of Capron. It was like something they were doing at the Lions Club, but it was like the place the village used for all its events.
Mhm.
And we chose to look at Capron as a neighborhood. This again, the point of this is to make sure that what the end result of the work is that residents were the focus of it, or were what generated the projects, so that it is not. Does that make sense? As opposed to like in a community grant, you're looking at the mission of that organization that's applying for that, and they're doing a missional type of work. This is something that really should affect the people who live in that area you've identified.
Yeah, and could I just add
Sure.
a little to that? Yeah, so yeah, not only affect the people that live in that area, but they need to be actively engaged in making it happen. And their input needs to be important in that. So it's like I was saying, it's for and about. So they're actually and buy. The buy is the important thing. I mean, in some ways, I look at it as the outcome really has more to do with what does it do with the individual neighbors and residents, more so than the actual outcome. So using a concrete example, maybe it's not even as important that the house gets fixed. It's more the leadership skills and the connecting that the residents have done while they were doing that. So another example would be like, say, a neighborhood garden. It's not really about the fruits and vegetables, not really. It's more about the neighbors getting together and helping each other grow those fruits and vegetables and learning more about each other and connecting about each other or with each other.
So would the fact that the neighbors are getting together to help this individual who's in a wheelchair and needs a ramp?
That part definitely fits. Yes.
Okay, because I mean, the man that's going to be the house captain is the pastor at a church in Orangeville, and he is applying to all his congregants to get involved in helping and everything else there. So it would need to be a lot of people from Orangeville involved, not just all our volunteers, right?
Yes. Yes. And I don't know if this would work or not. But I mean, is it possible even that the church would apply on behalf of the community? They're based there.
We're told not to do that. As affiliates of Rebuilding Together, they highly recommend it. We not go through a religious organization.
Okay.
To do things.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. I mean, if that's something that your organization
the national
doesn't want to
organization.
promote, sure.
Because we really wanted to start out as an affiliate of our own local church, but they said no.
Yeah, no, and I can understand that. I guess from our perspective, which is different, obviously, right? It's community-based, whether it's religious or maybe it could have been a senior center, for example, would have been fine too without the religious affiliation. Just the idea that they were community-based. I'm just saying you're checking more boxes. You're checking more boxes if the organization that applies is actually embedded in that community. Sarah, does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Yes. Absolutely.
So I need to tell the pastor in Orangeville, he needs to recruit more volunteers from that area, because we were going to just use our regular Oregon volunteer base. And we're also working with probation and their service work program, so that we were going to put people needing to complete community service hours to work with our regular volunteers in hopes of forming communities that were more inclusive.
So maybe what we could do too, Becky, is if maybe we can get through more of the presentation, we could also set up a time with you, your organization specifically, with Kyler and I. We can go through a little bit more in detail, just since it's your first time applying.
Okay.
To get more into specifics, but for today,
Gotcha.
for right
I'll
now,
stop
maybe
I'll
Yeah.
stop interrupting.
to hear the questions, because we might need to address, but like I don't want to go too far into one specific case right now, but then
Gotcha.
we can at the end. So
Gotcha.
okay, so going back to what James was saying and tying back to that second point, we're really trying to promote resident participation and resident leadership in neighborhood-based groups and organizations. So that's part of why we're looking at that, making sure that voice is really heard throughout your grant application, where this grant is to invest and build on the existing strengths and assets of our regions and neighborhoods. So some of those are physical, and a lot of that's the people that live there. And then we're hoping to promote civic pride in our community. And where we live is a big part of how we feel about driving in and out, and walking around and all those sorts of things. What we see physically, who we know along the way makes a big difference to how we feel about our community. So this grant can start to promote, again, that resident participation and leadership in improving that. Are we on the slide? Each applicant must. So Kyler's trying to work out getting this fixed for me, but I haven't gotten there yet. So for each applicant, each applicant must either be an organized group or a 501c3 tax exempt not-for-profit agency. So you do not have to be a 501c3 for this. So how do we define organized group if you're not a 501c3? It's that you have a minimum of 3 active leaders, because this is not supposed to fund one person's project for the summer, right? We're talking about promoting resident engagement and leadership. So you'll have to show that you've done that. You have to show that you have a process to manage the grant funds. And one key element of that is having a checking account for the organization, so that, again, we're not looking to give money to one person to do some planting that they think the neighborhood would enjoy, right? Like, we're trying to vet out a little bit that it will be organized for the neighborhood. This is, you have to operate and organize so there's no discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, age, national or ethnic origin, political beliefs, veteran status, disability, or any other factor prohibited by applicable law. So in a further slide, we'll say this is not to, it's not that like a faith-based organization can't apply, but this can't fund the faith-based parts of their activity. We're not funding a Bible study, or we're not funding, those sorts of things, right? So if a church is helping to organize a neighborhood resident-led engagement opportunity, that still fits. It's just they can't require all of them to attend a service, or there's not, and all those sorts of things involved in that. So that's the most common. Of course, there's other things that we're asking you not to discriminate based on, but that's the most common thing. We just want to make sure you mention churches can still apply. Then you need to be current on all final reports for previously awarded grants from the neighborhood grant program. And if you're not sure about that, again, Lisa could look that up for you. And by the way, at the end of this, there'll be a contact slide with Kyler and Lisa's information on it. So again, a few more things. You have to be in Boone, Ogle, Stephenson, and Winnebago County. And again, this is where we added that defined geographic area. We've had applications come in before that referenced residents and probably being in neighborhoods, and they thought they hit some of our criteria. But you really have to define where you're working, and it has to be really affecting that specific geographic area. It can't be just your whole service area kind of thing. Each applicant also has to have the capacity to complete the proposed project by the end of this year. So the idea is that you get it done by, somewhere in the summer and the fall, and by November, you can finish your final report, which we uploading any receipts of where you spent the money, doing that part of that financial report. So if the project's not done, you're going to have a hard time doing that report. So again, when you're looking at applying for this, you really need to be thinking about, in this year, what is it that we could do? I know we're all hoping that things are going to start, it feels like things are getting better with COVID, and that, again, if we're doing outside projects and that, we should be in a pretty good space. But as we've seen different waves, different things have happened throughout this pandemic. It's been very unpredictable for all of us that have never done this before, right? So we're asking you to just keep that in mind and stay cognizant of that. Your best piece of advice, COVID related or not, but if at any point during the project something changes on you, something that you thought was a variable that was under control, but now something's a little different, just stay in communication with Kyler. And he can help you figure out how to adjust your grant or adjust what you're spending or whatever we need to do to make sure you still get to that final report. We'll be looking to make sure you stay within what you've committed to on your grant ask, but if a modification needs to happen because of something different happening in the pandemic, we're going to all be going through that. And so we're going to help you process that and figure out how to work. So just this slide here is just to make sure you're really thinking about the fact that this is not a 2-3 year grant. This is this year. So make sure that you're thinking about the whole environment when you're planning that out. If you've been awarded in the past, and I'm not sure anyone on this call has, but if you have, and you're applying for the same thing that you've gotten funded for in the past, we really need to hear about your sustainability plan. This is to get work and leadership started to grow it. But as leadership grows, really they should be finding a way to connect to other funders and more funders and bigger funders, honestly, right? This is a grant to start and get new voices and resident voices with some funding that's a little bit, I'm going to say easier, honestly, to access generally, because we don't require that 501c3. We want to make sure that we're helping those conversations start. But as you're forming and getting more organized, longer term funding is something you should really be thinking about. Projects we funded in the past, beautification projects. So in neighborhoods that have like signage areas, public areas, maybe boulevards with things in the middle. There's been all sorts of different things we've done on beautification projects, neighborhood cleanups, some things in the public parts of the neighborhoods. They have done there's been some work around neighborhood watch groups in the past. That's part of that crime prevention. We also, in neighborhood cleanups, maybe are really strategic about what you're cleaning up in an alley or around lighting, or those sorts of things, to just make sure a neighborhood's staying safe for walking around at all times, including evenings. We do fund neighborhood events and newsletters and organizing. And this is something to really think about. Like, even if maybe the core of the work ends up that your particular organization is looking at might be on more of a private property, you might need to bring neighbors together to understand who you are, to understand what's going on, to give you input on how they feel about it or what they could participate in. But newsletters and organizing goes beyond that too. It's like to get people connected to who they live by. That's a great thing. And there's just study after study about how people feel better in their neighborhood when they know the people they live around, when you're not just waving, but you're waving to Bill, or waving to someone that it's a big part of civic pride, honestly. So that's a good thing. We've done community gardens. Again, the key with those is it's not a community garden if it's in Joe's backyard. Even though Joe might really not have it fenced and feel it's okay for everyone to walk onto his property, if he changes his mind in 3 years, it's now his garden and it no longer belongs to the community because you're on private land, right? So a community garden, a reforestation project, those sorts of things, that's why we talk about public spaces and we talk about community spaces. No one believes at the beginning of the project that anyone's ever going to get mad at each other because we're going to be best friends forever. And I really hope this grant does help everyone become best friends forever. It's just, from our standpoint, from a charitable purpose standpoint, to be honest, So we need to make sure that we help you with that sustainability plan long run, and sustainability includes just keep it off Joe's yard. Let's all work on the public space together. And that just keeps it good for everyone longer term. And then there's a couple other ideas there with doing some surveys in a neighborhood to see how residents feel about living there, what they're feeling about the properties or the community spaces and that. Or you can do some resident focused education. We did a project with the Natural Land Institute once about how to plant for drainage. So the neighborhoods that were having issues with flooding, so how to look at more natural plants natural to the Illinois and that, but how you could do some drainage projects in your yard, but also in the public spaces. It was a great education focus for neighborhoods. Going to the next important notes, again, some of this based on what we said probably seems logical, but beautification projects, if you're installing something like a neighborhood trash can, a bench, that sort of thing, it needs to be on public property in a common area. And, we are hoping when you're thinking through any beautification things that you're thinking longer term, which includes watering. Watering. We as an organization owned lots of lots in Freeport for a while. We let them out to people to do gardening projects. And then the watering issue became a huge deal because often when land's been cleared, the water source has not been left behind. So now you're asking a neighbor to loan water or you're trucking in water, right? So really think about where you're planting and that kind of thing. And then again, I already mentioned, but if you're looking at reforesting, the trees have to be in the public and common areas. It's not the city of Rockford. If you live within a city of Rockford, they offer sometimes programs for trees on private properties, but that's not what this program's for. So what we don't fund, again, we've gone over this several times, the private property issues. This isn't just for neighborhood associations to try and get pizza for all their regular meetings, right? Like this, when it talks about refreshments, it's not that we've never funded food, but there has to be a purpose to the event that's different, that's organizing, that's bringing people together. It's not just to, if you could see the picture over to the right, it's not so that you can hold a concert or do something fun in your neighborhood because you feel like it. Like we're really trying to promote, again, civic pride and growth in leadership and connection of voices. So if you submit a neighborhood event or block party or those sorts of things, really think about what you're doing with that event and how you're going to measure that, the success of that. What's the follow-up? People that come to this event will then engage with us how. That's the intent of saying refreshments and entertainment. We are not looking, so activities that primarily benefit non-resident organizations, including nonprofit or for-profit. And then again, we've hit this a couple different ways, but if we've had before organizations that want to do a physical improvement on their property and they feel they're in a neighborhood, so then they turn in an application and say, we're sure the residents will like the fact that we fixed this up on our property, which is probably true, but you didn't really talk to anybody and you didn't have an event follow-up where the residents were going to be offered this as a resource for them, like there wasn't, it's not really engaging people, and it's really not about building their voice or leadership. It's about the fact that your gazebo needs paint. So, we will see that when we're reading the grant, right? So you really, again, we're saying this over and over, but really think about the people and how, and when you're writing it, how you're talking, you just show us that you really care about who you're talking to and who's doing this with you. And then I already talked a little bit about the religious participation. Again, you can be a faith-based organization and apply, but you cannot require people to participate in the faith-based portion of what you do. So we're looking for those projects generated, led, and executed by residents. We're looking for projects that build on assets existing in the neighborhood, including the skills of the residents, involving youth, or working with an existing neighborhood group. We want to encourage partnerships between the residents, businesses, nonprofits, and institutions within the neighborhood. And James was referring that when he answered Becky earlier. Important things to know, the application's already open, and like James mentioned, it'll be closing end of the day on April 4th. We give you that one last weekend, get a little more time in if you need. you go through the Community Foundation's online portal. So best thing is to go to cfnil.org and follow the grants submenus in that. And then James showed you how you would sign up. But Lisa, who's on this, is really your resource for questions on that. The maximum amount is $2,500 for this. After this project is open, and as soon as we get notification from our national partner, we will also then put notice out about an opportunity to go to a Community Leadership Institute. That is a national training that we can send a group of up to 7 people to. We don't know where it will be this year, but I do know it will be coming back in person this year, and it will be in October. So in the past, we've gone to Houston, Phoenix, Chicago, Columbus, Ohio. We've gone to different towns, and then that city hosts and shows what neighborhood organizations, neighborhood-led projects, organizations that work with residents, what they've done in that city. It gives you ideas, and you connect with, honestly, almost 90 other teams like you from all over the nation who are also thinking about this and projects and things that they're working on. And it's just a great 3-4 day event where they give you time to learn and be just in this space. And because of our partnership with the Community Foundation and with NeighborWorks, that if you're chosen to be that team to go, those expenses are all paid. So your airfare, your conference, your hotel, and you're given a stipend even for dinner and everything. So you just get to spend those 3 or 4 days with your team, networking, thinking through projects you want to do, asking about resources, and just really, it's a growth opportunity. So again, as soon as we have the information from NeighborWorks on where it will be, we will put out an application for people to be part of that. The neighborhood group applicants are always the first ones to hear about it. So make sure Kyler knows if you're interested, and we can make sure you're on that list too. And then here's the contact information that I promised. That's Kyler's direct line. And it's didn't get all of your email here. Oh, but because I'm still in edit, there you go. So there's Kyler's email. And then there's Lisa's, and hopefully Lisa, I got that correct. Yes, she's nodding. Okay, great. So, and maybe that could also be put in the chat just too. We'll put that back out in there. It's on the website. It's on our Facebook posts. It's in multiple places too, to make sure that you know who Kyler and Lisa are and which set of questions they can help you with. So I'm going to stop my awkward share since I never got it off that and go back to here. And say any questions, anything else we can answer, or if for anyone, Kyler, James, or at least if there's anything I forgot, make sure we cover that. But
yeah, not something you forgot, because you certainly didn't. Just to reinforce, you probably heard neighbor engagement, neighbor led, neighbor participation, resident oriented, leadership development, capacity building a lot of times. And that was by design, because that's what it's about. Again, I want to go back to the idea. It almost doesn't matter that you grew any fruit. The community garden could be dead at the end of the project. It really wouldn't matter if the residents engaged with each other and learned skills and ways to advocate for themselves and so on. So that's really the goal, right? The other stuff is sort of it's kind of a tool or a means to get there, honestly.
excellent. Great. So any questions?
And then as you see in the chat right now, I'm adding myself and Lisa's contact information. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes if you want to jot that down. And this is being recorded, so I can pass along that information as well.
And just want to say hello to Manny, joined a little late. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. How's it going, guys? Sorry I was late, but better late than never.
Great.
That's right.
Well, I'll just want to reiterate too that Kyler definitely contact if you have questions, like Becky, everything that you were asking. And if you'd like to, I think it'd be great if you want to set up a time to meet with Kyler and I, and we can go through a little bit more since it's your first time and you're newly organizing. There is some really things at the heart of what you do that are really possible for this grant. But if you're not, I don't want to force you into doing something you weren't really going to do either, right? Like, so we could definitely go through that with you. One of the reasons I can offer that to you is we administrate the grant, but we have a grant committee that reviews and votes. So we can definitely go through some things with you, answer some questions, and work on that with you, because that doesn't affect, you know, does that make sense? We're not, it's not giving you special favor because we're not deciding, like the committee's deciding, right? Like we're helping you get through the process. And so we want this to be as good for you as possible.
When you say meet with you where?
Well, we have a Freeport office. So
We have a Freeport office,
we
yeah.
do. Yes, we do.
And that is located where?
The old Freeport Home Medical. So it's on Main, 307.
Freeport
Main.
Home.
Well, it's our address
Right.
of Freeport is 307 West Main, but it used to be, if you're familiar with the Freeport Home Medical, where that used to be, we bought that building and took it over.
Okay.
I have a
Okay,
really quick
so
question.
I could bring in some of my stuff that I've already, like I said, I have totally filled out last year's application or almost completed it. But it was before I realized how much I need to word it so it becomes very clear about the neighborhood aspect of it.
Great. Yes, you could definitely bring that in.
Yeah.
I have a really quick question, you guys. I'm new to this in our neighborhood. I've been appointed to take over our neighborhood neighbors program. I don't know, there's no name for it. I don't know if you know Rockford. I'm in a Palm Avenue neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So as far as beautification, we have a beautiful neighborhood. I don't think that we need to beautify this. I mean,
That's a flex, but okay, whatever. No, just kidding.
no, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't see us, we don't need a neighborhood garden or anything like that, but I'd hate to miss an opportunity. Is there like a brainstorming session we could have or something to where, because we already meet, we already do an email blast, I already have a neighborhood group for our neighborhood. We're really well connected. And when I say our neighborhood, it's about 3 square blocks. Or no, yeah, three square blocks. Do I want to grow that? Yes, but at the same time, it's hard to keep up with just 3 blocks as it is.
Yeah.
So I know we have the only thing that we do every year is a neighborhood cookout. Other than that, we don't, everybody's guarded. I mean, 90% of my neighbors are all retired. A leaf drops in their yard and they go out and pick it up right away. So I mean, they're already doing great with that stuff, but what other ideas do you have that we could use this for?
Sure. So, yeah, we could definitely set up a session because it's sometimes hard to think of it right in the thing. But so, you know, again, the newsletter and e-blast, if you feel like if there's a better way or a way you'd like to try this year to do a second level of that, right? Like if the e-bus is catching most people, but you've had some move in or some other things, we've had people make door hangers or do postcards. We've also had neighborhoods form more of an identity, like they put together, you know, old school pamphlet, website, Facebook page, whatever they can, and then gone to the realtors and said, you know, we're upping the median value of our neighborhood by showing you how valuable we are, and you should want to move people in here. They promoted themselves, right? Like they've, and that helps them talk about themselves and talk to each other about what do we think is great about living here. They get together and really form their voice by talking about those things. And they put, you know, or your gardens, you could create some buzz about with you all by coming up with an award for reward which retiree picked up the Believe the Fitness. I'm just kidding.
The quickest, right?
You can have your own grant, you know, your own garden have a celebration of the gardens in your neighborhood that is a little different this year than your normal cookout. But you have this moment, and maybe there's like some way that you promote the pride of that you use a little bit of this type money to do.
Manny, I'm not aware. Do you have neighborhood signage that says the name of your neighborhood? Sometimes that's a nice sort of rallying thing for a neighborhood, an identity. If they have a signage that says this is blank neighborhood.
We've thought of that, but we don't find we haven't found a location to put it at that's public.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we would put that. Do we want one? Yeah, that we would love to have that. I'm working with our alderman Frank Beach on closing down our street, actually, because we've had a lot of accidents at Palm Avenue and East State Street, right at the top of the hill. For those of you that don't know where I'm at, if you've ever seen the house with the Green Bay logo on East State Street,
Yep.
That's our street right there. That's Palm Avenue. So, no, I'm not a Green Bay fan, but we've had a lot of accidents there, and we're talking about either closing it off or putting in a pork chop. But from what I understand, because the state owns that street, it owns State Street right there, the state's going to pick up the tab. So initially, I thought about this grant as something to help us with the aid of that closing of the street. But we're good on that now. And if there's no traffic coming in that street, that's the street where we wanted the signage for the neighborhood. But I would love to see some hanging on the light post or something like that. I just don't know how to even go about pricing that, what the total cost would be, who do I get that approved through. So it's kind of like I'm lost here.
Right. So, Kyler, can you remind me, and I'll go through Kyler. We did fund, well, I can't remember if it was Hate Village or it was one of the historic ones on the river. We funded a few signs for them for light posts. So we should be able to get you some information on how that gets done.
Okay.
So we can look that up. Alex is on the call too. I don't know if Alex, didn't we fund, aren't there some in your neighborhood too?
Yeah, so I'm Amber. I'm from the Hate Village neighborhood as well.
Okay.
And previous years, yes, you helped fund not only repainting the lampposts, but getting the banners that hang from the lampposts that help identify our neighborhood as a historic neighborhood.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great project for your retirees. They did. And now that was, I think, the first year we were part of it. It was beautiful. I mean, they repainted and then put these planters on and then did some stuff on it. It really, and again, it brought everybody outside. It was a great thing to do on a beautiful day. And it was like this immediate impact of the lights looking so different.
Gotcha. Okay. Good idea, James. Thanks.
Manny, I live near you, and so maybe you could partner with the North Highland Neighborhood Association. It's not really an actual association where there's any leaders, but that might be a little bit of a way to expand where your territory is, because there's that park right there. Maybe you could do something with the park. Maybe put a couple of the little libraries, build some of those library boxes. And there's a little bit more public space if you go a couple blocks out of your area right there.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I finally infiltrated their group.
Well, I expect to see all your posts about your food. Then
I know, I was gonna say, like, when I follow you on Facebook, how does not everyone not know who you are? Like,
Exactly. Everybody does know who he is, don't they? I thought they did.
Oh man, it's a shame. It's always about food.
yeah. Follow Mandy, by the way, at Stateline Foodies. Like, you get all the local restaurants, you see pictures, you know where to go to eat every weekend. It's so great.
Who doesn't love to eat, right?
Yeah, right.
I know I do. No, yeah, it took a while to get into the group. Thanks to Barb Chidley, I'm in the group. But I'll definitely see that. I'm up for anything and everything. I'm one of those guys that let's throw it in the wind. Let's see what falls, right?
You have contact, you can contact us anytime for any more questions. Really appreciate people coming today. And
Yes.
and
Sarah,
consider-
how do I contact you? I've somehow missed getting anything down for you. I've got Lisa's phone number and email, and I've got Kyler's, but I don't have yours.
Yeah, so I'm gonna punch on that. I'm gonna make sure with Kyler. Kyler will get with me. I'm going to be
Okay.
working through these grants to the end of this cycle, so I will definitely be available. And so Kyler will.
So I just need to call Kyler and set up a date for us to get together.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The organization I represent will change at the end of this month, and that's part of my email will change, and that's part of why I'm not giving it out, as I don't want people to get last minute,
Okay.
right? But I will definitely be available during this grant cycle. So, but again, start with Kyler, and he'll make sure whatever's needed, I'm there. So,
Yes.
Okay. This has been helpful.
Yes.
Great.